It's 6 o'clock and it's the start of our ASI Economic Outlook Forum. Now, on April 7th, we had the first part of this, and it was focused on navigating Jamaica's economic challenges for sustainable growth. And one of the comments that we heard near the end of the program was, well, it needs a part two. Well, here's the part two. We'd like to welcome everyone who has joined us online, wherever you are, to the part two of the ASI Economic Outlook Forum 2025. And today's staging is under the theme Balancing Perspectives, Changing Jamaica's Economic Future. We have lined up as speakers today, or two main presentations, one being Mr. Julian Robinson, and he is the opposition's spokesperson on finance and the public service. We'll have a presentation from him, and we'll also have another presentation from Dr. David Lowe, who is the Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica, on facilitating growth through financing and the work of the DBJ. As we did last time, we certainly will have that moment where we can ask questions and have the answers given, seek clarity based on what our presenters present. And of course, it's not just from the moderators level. We took questions from you. We want your questions. So think on them as you listen and seek the clarity that you need. Pose your questions. We'll ask as many as we can and as are appropriate. And let me just welcome everyone who is watching us. I believe we're on NCU FM and NCU TV. We will be on the YouTube channels of the Jamaica Union of Seventh-day Adventists. We'll be on the ASI Jamaica Union platforms, the EJC West Jamaica Conference. Well, let me do that again. The East Jamaica Conference, the West Jamaica Conference, the Central Jamaica Conference, and the North East Jamaica Conference YouTube platform. So we're streaming on all those places, or will be at some point during our presentation. I also need to welcome briefly, the formal welcomes will happen, our panelists, Mr. Sidney Thomas, Mr. Cindy Thwaites, apologies Sir Thwaites, the President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and Ms. Antoinette Hamilton, the President of the MSME Alliance. They were with us during the last staging, and they're with us here again to field your questions and to contribute from their expertise in the positions in which they sit. So welcome one, welcome all. Let's all participate in the economic future and outlook of Jamaica. We all live here. We all care about what happens here. So I'm looking forward to us having a good session this evening. Going forward, I am going to invite now Mr. Cecil Foster, the President of ASI Jamaica, the ASI Jamaica Union, to give us his opening remarks. And then we're going to invite the President of the Jamaica Union Conference, Pastor Everett Brown, to bring us greetings. After those two, Mr. Cecil Foster, Pastor Everett Brown, I'll return.
Okay. Pastor Daniel Daniels is going to give us a word before I can open my mouth. He said I should not open my mouth until he gives us a word. So Pastor Daniels, Danilo Daniels, right? You would want him to go before me, right, Theo?
We can have the spiritual charge going before, so let's just underline that one properly. So Pastor Danilo Daniels is our President of the North East Jamaica Conference, and he'll open the whole session then with our devotional charge. Pastor Daniels.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me this evening to share in this moment. We give God thanks for the opportunities that we have to look at current affairs, things which are happening in our island nation, and how we chart the course forward. This evening, as we contemplate Jamaica's economic future, we are reminded that lasting prosperity requires more than strategies and projections. It requires wisdom which comes from the everlasting Father. It requires for us to be balanced. It requires Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14 says, where there is no counsel, the people. Yeah.
I have your mic muted. There are also one or two others that are open. Please mute so that we can have no interference. Pastor, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it reminds us, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14 reminds us that without wise counsel, people fall. Therefore, we must seek broad perspectives informed by truth and guided by godly principles. I'm also reminded as we turn our Bibles and we flipped it through the Bibles there is much that we can learn through the Word of God. And I'm not going to be very long, just about 3 more minutes or so. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 18 says it is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Ecclesiastes cautions us to avoid extremes, understanding that sustainable growth lies in balance between ambition and compassion, innovation and tradition, progress and perseverance. We have to find balances. And this evening, I pray that as we look at the economics of our country, we will seek to find balances there. Micah chapter 6, verse 8, one of my favorite passages where Micah teaches about justice and mercy. We also have to understand that we must, if we become wealthy, if we have enough money to spend, we must be just with it. And we must ensure that it doesn't get us forgetting who has brought us here, and we must remain humble before the sight of the Lord. And my final passage for this evening is Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah assures us that God has plans for us. He has a lot of plans for us. And all the plans that God has for us is to harm us. And so this evening, I invite us to commit ourselves, not just to financial gain, but to building a future that is wise, a future in our Heavenly Father, a future in not just in this island nation, which we all love, but a future living with our Heavenly Father. Let us invest not just in having nice houses and a good, nice business, but let's invest in the kingdom of God. Let's be wise with our investments. Let's be balanced with our investments. And whilst we seek to live in a country filled with hope, with prosperity, a country that is littered with good things, we look forward to an even better place. And Jeremiah reminds us that the plan that the Lord has for us is a plan to have us prosper, not to harm us, but to give us a hope and a future. I look forward to the future which the Lord has for us. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we ask that you will continue to guide the footsteps of your people. We pray, Lord, you will continue to so guide the leaders of our country. We pray, Father, that this evening's proceeding will redound to your name's honor and glory. We look forward, Lord, to not just building here on this earth, but to building in your eternal kingdom. We look forward to entering to walk on streets of gold, that you have gone to prepare for us. Until then, keep us faithful. May we have a profitable time this evening, we ask in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Daniels. We will now proceed as previously announced with opening remarks from ASI Jamaica Union President, Mr. Cecil Foster, and he'll be followed by Pastor Everett Brown, bringing us greetings, the President of the Jamaica Union Conference.
I must say thank you, Pastor Theodore Henry, and thank you for hosting this event for us once again. I think you have done a fabulous job in the past, and it is going to happen again tonight. And for all those who are online, I just want to share, for those who do not yet know about the work and mission of ASI. We are a body that is tasked with a responsibility that we think is one of the greatest responsibility. It is one to work closely with the church that we are a part of. So this is a faith-based ministry, ASI. It is a body of persons who are in business, who are professionals, and who are in commerce and are a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so that is what the ASI is. We work along with the executive of the church to drive the mission and vision that God has mandated the church to drive in these last days. We also, as a body, we encourage our members to be entrepreneurial. So, and being entrepreneurial, we encourage them also to do so within the laws of the country, to make sure that they are above board and they do execute their daily task, that country can be proud and their God can be proud. We also encourage them to network together. So we have a Jamaican mission also for business, that we encourage the members, that numbers a few hundred in Jamaica, to network with each other. The ASI is drawn across from Jamaica, a full Jamaica union. For those who do not know, we have five conferences that make up the Jamaica Union. And we have the Northeast, we have the North, the West, the Central, and the East. And we have an overall body, which is the Jamaica Union, which is where we sit. And we give support to those bodies, those conferences. And so that's a little bit about what ASI is all about. Here are a few of the activities, gentle friends, that we have been engaged in. And Adis will put them up. So the Jamaica Union, each conference, each chapter that is embodied in a conference, we have projects, and you can skip to the next slide. And we want the individuals to break out of their walls and do something great for themselves and for their God and for their community. And so for the West Jamaica Conference, they have a community service impact program where they offer support to persons who are in need. Next one, please. Their leader, Sister Joan Thompson, and so on. They have maybe young, maybe old persons, or persons who are wherever they are and are in need. They work with them in that region to build up their welfare. And then we move to the next one. We have also worked with, and she in the West, Joan in the West Conference region, worked closely with us to help us to build what we call an Adventist Business Network, A, B, and N. This is where you can find your plumbers, your doctors, your lawyers, person who sells fish, whatever it is. And so this is an app that we use to connect and find businesses in our area, a plumber, an electrician, or whatever it is. And so we can encourage them by doing more. And so that's one of the projects that is being, or two of the projects that are being done in that West Jamaica Conference. And the next one will give you, this is still about the business directory. And we have the North East Jamaica Conference chapter of ASI. And in this, we have a number of things taking place there. And one of the major things that we did just recently is to help, as we move along, help to change the fortune of the Port Maria High School, as they had a sewer problem there. And we helped them to get remedy for it, to fix the sewer problem that they had there. And we are very happy that they are operating in a more wholesome environment, and that is the Northeast Jamaica Conference, ASI. And the project was completed on budget, on time, and all persons are happy. And the next project that is also in that came from that region is the Northeast Jamaica Castor Bean project. We have formed a company, and we are planting, and we are buying and planting castor bean. And this is a charitable project only to help the schools in that region and other regions as we go along. And so we are looking forward to great things. The Central Jamaica Conference chapter is embarking on a lot of projects, including one that was just completed a few weeks ago, where the family needed a home, and they put their money and their shoulders together and found resources, as you can see on the screen, and they now have handed over the unit to the family that now can live in a better condition. So that's a part of what ASI does. And you have medical mission taking place through the ASI team. We have Three Angels Pharmacy, who is very much supportive of this medical mission that we are doing. And then we have the ASI North chapter. This is where water is life comes to life, where in their area, a lot of persons who are living in a rural township, they need to have water, and they have presented bottles or a canister that they can catch water from wherever, and they can store them and get it to use as they go along each day. And so they have this Water for Life program, which is one of the flagship programs in that region. That's the North Jamaica Conference. And then finally, we have the East Jamaica Conference chapter, led by Alfred Thomas. And one of the flagship programs that we have is the Good Samaritan Inn, where almost 1,600 persons who are living on the streets are fed on a weekly basis at the Jefford Place location in Crossroads. And from there, they get a chance also to wash themselves and then go back to wherever they want to go back, and return each day for a place of refuge to help them. And we have the young people, that's called public campus ministries. They are youngsters who share the campuses across Jamaica. Every year we have a week of celebrations with them, and we have mentorship program with them. We have a interaction with the gospel preaching, and we just work closely with the young people in this East Conference region, and the others from North and South and East and West. They all come together and make hundreds of people gather at the Jamaica College every September for a day of consecration. So here are just some of the things that ASI has been doing, and we pray that we will continue to do what God has called us to do, and we just ask that we all support each other. So just a little bit about ASI. I thank you very much for joining us this evening, because we are now going to be encouraging people to become better at taking care of their individual economy that can grow the country and grow themselves. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Just before we have Pastor Brown giving us his greetings, welcome everyone. We are happy for your presence, and we're asking you to be very judicious with that mute mic button. So just double check that your device is muted and keep it that way as we go through our presentations. Pastor Brown.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this Part 2 Economic Forum. Please allow me first to commend the leadership of ASI Jamaica. In a very special way, President Cecil Foster and the leadership of ASI. I wish to commend you for the work you continue to do as you partner with the formal church structure in not only fulfilling the mission of the church, but building capacity and building Jamaica's entrepreneurship, assisting businessmen and women to leverage their business to fulfill mission, to impact society, build capacity. This is huge. To have the opposition spokesman on finance, Mr. Julian Robinson, Dr. David Lowe, as presenters this evening is huge. A lot of misinformation is out there regarding what is happening economically. And I believe that information is critical, not only to consumers, but to business persons. And hence, I believe the information we receive this evening, that the farmer out there in Portland or Manchester, or the businessman doing his little business out there in Clarendon will benefit, because through the church structure, information, proper information can be disseminated, which will assist these persons in their business endeavors. So congratulations, ASI. I'm looking forward to the information, and I wish you every success in this economic forum. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Brown. Thank you for those words of greeting. And I know you're echoing what others are thinking, that we're looking forward to the information that will be received, information that will be received right now. Again, welcome to everyone who is listening, watching. We are streaming live on NCUFM and TV. We are on the conference platforms, the Seven Adventist conference platforms of North East Jamaica Conference and the East Jamaica Conference. Of course, feel free to invite those that you think will benefit from this information. And as we head into our first presentation, again, I'm reminding you that after our two presentations, we will have that question and answer segment based on what was said during the presentations, or the questions and clarity that you want. So listen carefully and please begin to formulate those questions, and I will be your mouthpiece. Now, our first presentation will be done by Mr. Julian Robinson, the opposition spokesperson on finance and the public service. And let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Robinson, and then he'll do the rest. Now, he's been a member of parliament for the constituency of St. Andrews Southeastern since 2011. He is currently opposition spokesman on finance and the chairman of Parliament's Public Accounts Committee. But from 2012 to 2016, he had served as the Minister of State in the Ministry of Science, Technology, Energy, and Mining. Now, during his tenure as Minister of State in the Ministry of Science, Technology, Energy, and Mining, he had led the development of a national cybersecurity strategy, the establishment of a cyber incident response team, and the establishment of Startup Jamaica, which is an incubator for technology entrepreneurs. But prior to all the political campaign, the political career, I should say, Mr. Robinson, based on your bio, we also see that you had gone through business and in relation with IBM. But this evening, we are inviting you to address us on the matter of the opposition's perspective on Jamaica's economic landscape. So we make you welcome, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. And let me begin by thanking ASI and the Seventh-day Adventist Church for hosting this forum. And it's a welcome opportunity to share with you what our ideas are, primarily on, I'm going to be speaking about the things that I think are necessary to grow the economy. And I'm starting there because if you look at Jamaica's economic history since independence, on average, we have experienced just over 1% growth in the 62 years of our independence. On average, we've had periods where it's been high, periods when it's been negative, but if you average it out, we're talking about just over 1%. If you look at the current environment, we're coming out of 2 quarters of negative growth. We may have positive growth in the quarter that will end now. But the projection for the next 4 years, and this is pre-tariffs in the US, is for 1% growth each year. And if you look at that forecast is simply not going to be sufficient to lift the quality of life and the standard of living of the majority of the Jamaican people. So my presentation is going to be focused on what I believe are the necessities to increase growth and to improve productivity in the Jamaican economy. And I'm going to be using 5 E's, and I'm going to start with education. And Jamaica has to undertake a fundamental reform of our education system. And you might ask, what is the connection between education and growing your economy? Well, the reality is that if we continue to have the very poor outcomes, and the poor outcomes, I'm talking about students who are leaving high school after 10 years of formal education and are illiterate and innumerate. We cannot grow our economy if we cannot supply the workforce, supply the industries with the workforce, with the requisite skills. One of the big debates taking place right now, private sector players have been lobbying the government to import labor because they simply can't find enough skilled Jamaicans to do the jobs that are necessary. We have relatively low unemployment of 3.5%, but we have over 700,000 Jamaicans who are outside the formal workforce for one reason or another. People who have opted not to participate in the workforce. So we have to reform education, and our proposal is really to tackle the problem at the earliest stage of a child's development, which is early childhood and primary school education, and put the resources there so that we can have students leaving primary school who are literate, numerate, and can do some maths. The problem we have is that too many students are going on to high school. They're not at the high school level. Many of them are reading at grade 2 or grade 3. And as such, they do not perform well in high school. The schools try remedial type programs, but ultimately we just have too many students who are leaving illiterate and illiterate. So the first thing is to fix education at the root, which is the early childhood level, which will lead to better outcomes at the high school level. And if you graduate students who are literate, numerate, you can attract higher level type investments to the country, and you can improve your productivity. Because one of the challenges with the Jamaican economy, which has contributed to the anemic economic growth, is that we have very low and declining productivity. And you need to improve the quality and the skills coming out of your workforce. So reform of education is the first thing. And we have seen examples where a pilot being done now at one school at the grade 7 level, which is still too late, but it's a good start, has yielded results in 1 year. where you're seeing improvements in literacy and numeracy from those students. That has to be replicated across the board at an earlier stage. The second E that I want to go to is electricity. Jamaica will never be competitive if we continue to consume electricity at the very high rates that we are. And we're somewhere in the region of US 40 cents per kilowatt hour, which is among the highest within the region. And if you're trying to be a manufacturer, even if you're in the services industry, you cannot effectively compete with those high levels of electricity. So we have to find ways to bring down the cost of energy, both as a way to ease the cost of living for the majority of Jamaicans, but to enable businesses to become more effective. And you might ask, how do we get there? So Jamaica is, or energy is produced primarily from oil and LNG. And so you are a taker on the world market, and depending on what is happening globally, prices may fluctuate. We have to increase the level of renewables into the grid. When we were last in office, we had a request for a proposal in 2013. We selected providers. That build-out took place in 2016. It's been disappointing that it's taken the current administration 8 years to have another request for a proposal out. But ultimately, we have to bring more solar, wind, and other sources to the grid. We have to, as the JPS license comes up for renewal in 2 years, we have to introduce improvements in net billing to make it more, to provide a greater incentive for persons who want to provide their own renewables and sell back to the grid. The rates now are just not attractive. We have to look at things like wheeling, which allows a company with multiple locations to provide energy from one location to another. And we have to ensure that there is transparent pricing in the grid. So, JPS buys from independent producers, but, you're not clear as to what price they're buying for, what the input costs are, what the transmission and distribution costs are, to ultimately end up with your final cost. So we have to make that transparent. And also we have to address the issue of energy theft, because electricity theft contributes 20% to the total energy cost. And if you don't address that in a meaningful way, then you're going to continue to have those who are paying subsidizing those who are not paying. And that's a big part of why our energy costs are so high. So having a plan to reduce the cost of energy is critical if we're going to have to be competitive as a country and to ease the cost of living. The third E relates to efficiency. So government is the largest single player in the economy in terms of its contribution to GDP, its employment, the money that it spends. And the capital budget, which in relative terms is small, the capital budget is 62 billion out of an overall budget of 1.3 billion, so just under 5%. But Jamaica has been unable to spend its capital budget over the last 3 years. And the capital budget is primarily things like building out roads, schools, hospitals, other big infrastructure projects. And the main reason we haven't been able to spend the money is that projects have been delayed through the inordinately long time that procurement takes, plus the own internal public service, which makes it difficult to get projects out. I was just muted there, sorry. I think somebody's on who's not muted. All right, let me continue. So a big part of efficiency is ensuring that we deal with the issues which are impediments to spending our capital budget. And you might ask, why is that important? If the most direct correlation to economic growth is your ability to spend the capital budget that you have. You can increase economic growth significantly by just ensuring that those projects actually take place in a timely fashion. So we have to improve our procurement processes. We have to improve and increase the efficiency of our public investment management system, where all major projects have to go through. The projects take an exceptionally long time to go through that process. And we also have to make government more efficient and effective. Right now, part of how government is structured, in my view, leads to some of those inefficiencies. So there's a concentration of agencies and departments under the Ministry of Economic Growth and the Office of the Prime Minister. That creates a bottleneck, particularly where the minister himself is the Prime Minister, and so many things require that approval. And so we have to look at a process where we introduce a system to facilitate multi-sectorial projects that cut across ministries, agencies, and departments, akin to what used to be done through the Development Council, which is chaired by the Prime Minister and which has representation from a number of ministries, agencies, and departments. So simply making government more efficient, improving procurement, increasing efficiency in our public investment management system so that we can get projects through the system much quicker will lead to an improvement in economic growth and output. The fourth E relates to our emerging economies, and we have identified a number of subsectors within our cultural and creative industries that provide tremendous opportunities for growth and development. Be there artists, musicians, potters, painters, people are using the internet to develop content. And so we're going to create a fund to facilitate those creative types who have great ideas, but who need business support so that they can build and grow their industries. And if you look at the sectors that have put Jamaica on the map and have allowed us to punch above our weight, the creative and cultural industries are a significant part of that. Now, I want to just highlight some of the industries that are pivotal to achieving economic growth. The first one is our agricultural industry. And what we have to do is invest more in research and development so that we can provide support to farmers. We have to revamp RADA to ensure that it provides the technical assistance so that farmers can be more productive. Now, we have farming at two levels. You have small-scale farming, which is people who are doing cash crops on half an acre, a third of an acre, up to an acre, which really contributes to rural development and to self-sufficiency. And being self-sufficient as a country in food production is an important goal. But beyond that, we have to incentivize larger scale farming so that you can provide to, particularly to our tourism industry. We spend over $2.5 billion importing food into the country, US dollars per year. A lot of those things can be produced in Jamaica, but our farmers need support. They need easier access to funding. We have to put in place more irrigation. At present, only 15% of agricultural lands have access to irrigation. So we need to improve and increase that so that it can produce all year round. So agriculture is a critical component of driving economic growth, improving food security, reducing our dependence on imported food items, and saving foreign exchange. The second sector which provides tremendous opportunities for growth is our logistics-centered economy, and there are a number of subsectors under that. We have been blessed of having one of the best locations within the region. When you come out of the Panama Canal, you hit Jamaica, and it provides an opportunity for a number of related industries, from transshipment to light manufacturing to assembly, where we're seeing there's a shipyard already in play. But there's a lot more that we can be doing based on our location. And the fact, apart from our location, we have good infrastructure, we have strong shipping links to ports across the region. So there are many opportunities there, which I believe we need to be very specific in implementing the logistics master plan, which developed a number of years ago, where we have done some things, but we really haven't gone the full 100% in implementing that. So when we look at those industries provide the opportunity for economic growth, for earning foreign exchange. We have to make it easier for entrepreneurs to access funding, and we made proposals, particularly for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, providing an incentive for them to come into the formal system by waiving corporate income tax for the first 3 years. We made a proposal which the DBJ has accepted, which is to, instead of having upfront fees for persons who are accessing loan funds, to roll those fees into the loan, so it's not prohibitive for those who want to borrow $10 million as an example. So there are some specific incentives. We have also said to the persons, businesses that are upskilling their labor force, that we would provide a matching grant from the Heart Trust NTA for whatever they spend to improve the productivity of their own labor force. So we have looked at incentives to ensure that businesses, particularly small businesses, can improve their productivity and can participate in growing the economy. We're in a very dynamic environment now with the threat of tariffs and the likelihood of tariffs, and we don't know how things are going to settle. But what we do know is that it will call on all businesses to become more efficient and to become more productive. And certainly it is important as a nation that we can be more self-sufficient and reduce our dependency on imports in many of the areas that we currently do. So that's really a synopsis of, in the 15 minutes that I have, of some of our plans to grow the economy, and I'll be very happy at the end to take questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. Just before we let you go, though, could you just repeat for us the E's that you had? I have education, electricity, efficient.
Which I apologize, and I'll just spend a minute on that. And it really relates to integrity in governance. And we believe very strongly that as leadership in the country, we have to lead by example. And our leader has made it clear that, and the opposition leader, that there are particular standards which he will uphold in terms of how he leads a government, of good governance, of transparency, and ensuring that all persons who are part of government adhere to those standards. And we haven't seen that in the current government, and in fact, we've seen the opposite. And we're very committed to maintaining those high standards, which we think are important in how we manage the economy, but also manage the society as a whole.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. And you are right, we will come back with the questions near to the end after our second presentation. So thank you once again, Mr. Robinson. All right, we're going to move now into our second presentation, and this will be by Dr. David Lowe, the Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica. And his presentation will be centered on facilitating growth through financing. And of course, that takes into account the role of the DBJ. So, Dr. Lowe, the floor is yours. And as Dr. Lowe gets his sharing sorted and begins his presentation, again, welcome to everyone. Please have your question and answer segment with some speed and alacrity. We won't rush it, but we do want the questions to be flowing, so have them ready so we don't have all of them piling up near the end. Dr. Lowe.
And thank you. The leaders and the members of ASI for giving us this opportunity to come and represent the Development Bank of Jamaica in addressing the title presentation today. I'd like to also share the importance of having a forum like this because, as it was mentioned by Pastor earlier, that we have a challenge in sometimes communicating impact and opportunities. And where the Development Bank of Jamaica is concerned, we want to make sure that we can reach an audience like yours and also continue to communicate in a very definitive way as to how we're playing a role and supporting the challenge of development and opportunity for finance as it relates to businesses, particularly small business and so on. So today I'm going to take you through a presentation which basically will help to crystallize the scope and impact of what the Development Bank of Jamaica has been doing in terms of playing a role as part of a multifaceted approach to how Jamaica is going to achieve some of its goals, whether they be the issue of economic growth or pockets of development that we believe can become scalable and make an impact for the greater good for all. So let me begin with slide. Just bear with me. Moment, please. Let me just try and see what's going on with the slide share. But while that happens, I can just continue with my discussion. So basically, Jamaica today has been a case study of evolution. Jamaica can really celebrate and reference a number of achievements that we've made in terms of attaining fiscal discipline and also support and sacrifices of the Jamaican citizens and businesses over the last 10 years. Specifically, we would have known by now that we've been able to achieve a number of macroeconomic results, which include a stable and growing NIR, stable exchange rate, and as was referenced before, our ability to see improvements in our unemployment rate, meaning that we've seen a very strong level of employment across Jamaica. But with these macroeconomic results, we're still faced with the challenge of seeing where economic growth can be sustained. And the challenges that we face today include persistent shocks, which include high vulnerability to global crisis, natural disasters, and of course, we're faced with a number of legacy issues as it relates to the business environment. Having said all of those things, there's still strong evidence of our ability to see impactful development in a number of areas. But the challenge with development is that it's a journey, and it does not always equate to measurable economic growth. So what we're faced with today is to discuss how the Development Bank of Jamaica, through its capacity to deliver with the tools and portfolio of services that it offers, to make an impact in this space. And I'll take you through this. So at the Development Bank of Jamaica, we look at 5 key pillars as to how we structure our tactical and strategic services. We look at government projects, which is probably where the DBJ is best known, where we support government projects related to public-private partnerships and the ability to privatize state assets and make them available to the public. Case in point would have been the recent Trans-Jamaica Highway share offer that was made to the public, and that was a very important achievement within the last year. The second pillar has to do with focusing on established industries. The 3 key targeted areas would include tourism, manufacturing, and agriculture. The third, which we consider to be pioneer and creative services, also with infrastructure, which means physical and digital infrastructure, is an important pillar for us. The 2 other pillars, as we like to refer to them, would include growth stage scalable businesses. And this is where the MSME business community fall within our scope of planned interventions. And finally, we also believe it's important to look at how we can support disruptive and innovative entrepreneurs. These are the folks who are not able to yet have a proven business case, but clearly there's an opportunity with the right mix of capital and support, we can support them in making these business possible and viable. So looking at the slide that is on the screen, we also look at where the DBJ plays a role in supporting each of these based on the tools. We have a capacity which we refer to as the bedrock tool portfolio, and that includes legislation, where we use policy advocacy. We use a number of other incentives to be able to support all of those three major projects. Projects, establish industry, and development and redevelopment. We also like to refer to the targeted tools that we have in our possession, which usually involve services. And those services tend to be within the scope of the talent for these specialized areas. So we at the DBJ have a number of very strong technical team members who are able to help with risk mitigation and supporting development of particular types of tools specific to the needs of different sectors. Then we have the investment tools. And these tools range in terms of offerings. They offer a range of things depending on the sector that you're involved in. And these are around the field of consulting and supporting the capital options tools that we have. So the access to capital lending tools is what I'm going to focus on a little bit more as we go along with the slides. So our priority going forward from April 1st, which is the start of our fiscal year, is really to see how we can enhance the MSME development, innovation, and digital transformation space. We've all accepted the importance of MSMEs because we want to see them scale, we want to see them contribute to the development of the economy, and we also want to see them improve and increase their ability to hire people and to perform opportunities for import substitution, export, just to name a few. But the most important thing about the Development Bank of Jamaica is that we want to do it in a much more holistic way going forward, where we're agile, we're able to understand how we can support the development of an entire ecosystem. So how do we do that? We do that through a number of interventions. And these interventions include not just access to finance through loans, grants, and equity, but also through business development, capacity building programs, technical assistance, and grants. And in particular, we're very proud of being able to support two particular platforms which help young early stage businesses to develop, to ensure that they can facilitate their growth through corporate governance and also being, developing their capacity to have creditworthiness when they approach the banks for loans. Mr. Robinson would have mentioned productivity, and we recognize the importance of this. And we are also continuing to do our best in ensuring that we can facilitate the growth through technology upgrades, equipment financing, and energy efficient solutions. The fourth is market development and competitiveness. We want to be a partner in supporting their growth through making sure that the market development and competitiveness is something that leads to export readiness and their ability to meet standards and certifications. Finally, linkages. We also believe that the ability to strengthen linkages within the context of an ecosystem is going to be necessary, important, and will be something of importance for us going forward. So let's talk a little bit about the access to finance and the capital solutions for MSMEs. We consider the capital options to be really in three buckets. The first refers to our debt products. We at the DBJ provide wholesale funding to deposit-taking institutions, which are commercial banks, and microfinance institutions. We provide the ability for them to on-lend to the public through a number of products that we've created. They include MSME loans, agribusiness loans, energy loans, and renewable energy loans. And we're going to continue to refine, develop, and roll out these as we go along. Grants are also available through the Development Bank of Jamaica. And we have a number of programs that are also designed to ensure that these things are geared towards solving solutions or providing solutions to problems that have been identified as we continue to investigate and understand where the bottlenecks exist for MSMEs. We also have capacity building products. And as I mentioned before, accelerate and incubator programs are things that we now see the development of small businesses that are now showing signs of growth from early stage and are now at the point where they can get great access to funding through the programs that we've done. And a number of these also include mentorship programs and basically how you can increase your ability to have corporate governance, which is a word I'll repeat over and over, because that's going to be critical for creditworthiness. So we've had an impact across Jamaica in a number of different ways over a period of time. The privatization that we're known for has generated approximately US $1.9 billion since 2009. So DBJ continues to do a very active role in support for efficiency and the ability to provide opportunities for public-private partnerships. The second one is business growth. The Development Bank has also been able to build out a network through the help of AFIs, deposit-taking institutions, and microfinance institutions. So the funding that we provide can have greater reach across the country. And to date, we have approximately 40 AFIs and MFIs that are accredited by Development Bank of Jamaica that are able to now access our funding and on lend to the public. The other important impact, which I am very proud of that we have available here because it's a world-class product, is a credit enhancement facility. And what this facility does is to provide guarantees for early stage and growth stage companies within the MSME framework that are then able to access funding through the AFIs or the banks, but to have a risk-sharing platform where the DBJ will provide an offer for credit to secure the funds that are being borrowed through the banks. And we can discuss that more through the Q&A. And finally, we also believe at the Development Bank of Jamaica that it's not just debt that we should be focused on in trying to scale businesses, but creating a platform and opportunities for private equity. So not just debt, but equity to assist in growing companies. As they go through different milestones, debt is not the only and most important source of capital, and we recognize that private equity needs to be developed. So we have helped to fund 10 private equity firms who are geared towards early startups and are able to then support their growth through their involvement in scaling, through corporate governance, and also best practices. So in the last 60 days, we have also been very active because, as we said earlier, we have started our fiscal year in April, determined to become much more agile, much more responsive. And what we're doing is doing so by rolling out every quarter a number of targeted interventions. And some of these interventions in the last 60 days have included the following, but are not limited to. The first one is the introduction of the roll-up of the DBJ fees to access upfront pre-loan liquidity. And what that means is that prior to this, a successful recipient would have been able to access funding, but would need to pay fees rolled up with GCT between the DBJ, the bank, and would take them to approximately another 10% of whatever it is that they would be borrowing. And that would mean that for eligibility to be possible, they would have to put that money up front. And this is a big call on liquidity that small businesses just can't afford many times. So we wanted to address that problem specifically by listening to where the challenges were. And we're very appreciative of the types of frank conversations we've had with the stakeholders. And we proposed this, and we're now putting this in place for May. The second intervention that we have is the Enhanced Energy Audit Grant. And this is a grant which is designed to address cost inputs, where the cost of energy, as Mr. Robinson spoke about, is very high. And manufacturers in particular are struggling with offsetting this cost because it's a direct impact on profitability and cash flow. So we believe that these interventions are also going to be important and will make a difference going forward. We also believe that financial literacy is critical because as MSMEs continue to be formed and created and in the need for cash and access to cash through the banks, they have to be prepared, particularly in the agricultural sector, to understand what it takes to be credit worthy. And we're doing our part in trying to facilitate that. We would have just recently announced a $29 million Jamaican program that will impact 450 farmers over a number of years to be able to determine how best we can facilitate their growth through understanding cash flow, business planning, and just generally their support, that as they move along this journey, we're there to support them. And this is being done in collaboration with both the RADA, Ministry of Agriculture, and also the JAS. Another intervention which we've found, which we're going to launch very soon, is the agri-sector loan to support poultry farmers. Again, within the context of an ecosystem, we believe this is a very viable sector, which has been a traditional hallmark of Jamaican agriculture. And we believe that by deepening our support for this sector can only provide a benefit to Jamaica and the farming community. Finally, we've also standardized how we go about stakeholder engagement. We have been setting up and executing what we consider to be a listening tour, which happens once per quarter, where we have critical stakeholder groups, Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, MSME Alliance, the SBAJ, JCC, and others, where we listen, take away an understanding of where challenges may exist, and we make targeted interventions through programs that we design, which is a mix of risk mitigation and capacity building. Going forward, we also have a number of initiatives. There was an announcement at the last budget speech where the development of a micro stock exchange is being pursued to provide another opportunity for equity and to also scale micro businesses. We also believe that we're going to spend a lot of time looking at how we can assist MSMEs from a working capital perspective. So not just to buy equipment and to have other interventions, but to figure out how we can use tools that have been introduced in other jurisdictions to varying degrees of success. And one such opportunity is for us to have a relook at reverse factoring. It was looked at by the bank a number of years ago, and in recent times we've been able to look at it again and approach two banks who are now exploring the discussion with us, and we're hoping that we can announce something later on this year with that. Our focus with supporting sectors and clusters with specialized products and services. So again, while we recognize the importance of the products or the goods producing sector, we want to make sure that we're able to support the services, the digital entrepreneurs, the services that are yet to be fully optimized from a Jamaican perspective. We want to make targeted interventions in that space. The other three things that I wanted to mention quickly is that we are also recognizing the importance of green climate financing. This is something that is evolving. I want to make sure that into the public domain within this current fiscal year. Finally, we want to talk about the silver economy. And this is another intervention that we believe is important, where we can recognize that there are a number of people who are leaving regular employment through retirement, and they're still energized to do something on their own. And there are also people who, for various reasons, have to leave the workforce in an employed manner, and they want to become entrepreneurs, but they're of an older age group. We want to make sure that we can make targeted interventions in that space. And we think that will also be something that will be well received. So we're currently exploring that to define the space that we're going to be in and how it's going to be rolled out. And with that, I will close the presentation and save further comments for the Q&A. And anybody who is viewing the presentation, you will see our contact information there, our social media handles, our general information. m.com for further information, anything that I've said. And with that, I will close my presentation and thank you again for allowing me to present what the Development Bank has been doing and continue to make sure that we can offer very clear communication as to where our interventions matter. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Lowe. Thank you, Dr. Lowe, for leading us through that. As Dr. Lowe mentioned, as Mr. Robinson mentioned, we're going to be having them on set together now to answer questions that you have. For the next 40 minutes or so, we're opening the floor for clarity, for questions. Those from you, please type them in the chat. We will present them to our panelists. So that's Mr. Julian Robinson, our first presenter, Dr. David Lowe, who has just presented, and we are also going to be welcoming Mr. Sidney Thwaites, the president of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, and Miss Antoinette Hamilton, the president of the Micro Small Media Enterprise Alliance, the MSME Alliance. But these four will be our panelists, and they'll be fielding your questions. Again, please, everyone, formulate the questions and post them so that we don't have them all coming in near when we are trying to close. So let's get our panelists on screen and we'll begin. Sure. Please go ahead.
Have put down large investments in this country, and they are looking for a buoyant economy that will make their returns be something that they can attain. Now to hear 1%. I know, Sir Julian, you have labeled a number of stuff, but I know education is a medium or long-term program. Yeah, I know education is a medium or long-term, plan. It is absolutely important. And tell me, which is your priority? How are we gonna change whatever we have on the table right now to make it be a 3 or 4% growth? It is, and it's not political, but if you were to be the finance minister, this economy would have been geared already for 1% growth. How would you change that gearing to make things better than just a 1% growth?
All right, thank you, Cecil. And the figures I quoted come from the government's own fiscal policy paper, which is part of the budget documents which were tabled. So this is the government's own projections in terms of growth. I outlined some of them, and I'll just go through them in order, because some of them are, as you rightly said, education is not immediate, but I believe we can't continue to kick the can down the road. I think we have to tackle it, because if you don't tackle it as a business owner and someone who is investing, you're going to continue to struggle to find the persons who you need to grow your own businesses. But I accept that is medium term. Also, the issue of energy and bringing down the cost of energy, that's not immediate. But again, I think we have to make the fundamental steps now so that when the license is up in 2 years' time, we have a different energy landscape. And the things I'm talking about have to be pursued simultaneously. What do I think can make an immediate impact? I think improving government efficiency so that you can spend the capital budget that you have. The main impediments to that are the procurement process, and changes have been made. The government made some amendments there, but the public investment management system is very inefficient. And I believe it's something that we have looked at. And so if you can just spend the full amount, the $62 billion, that by itself has a direct impact on economic growth, because that's money going into construction projects, large-scale projects. That's one. Making it easier to access funding. And David spoke about rolling the fees into the loan. Now, that's something we advocated for. It's something the MSME Alliance advocated for. While I'm happy it has happened, I'm disappointed that it took so long to happen, because there are so many persons who have not been able to access capital because, as you said, you're talking about up to 10% of what you're trying to borrow that you'd have to find up front. And that would be prohibitive to most people who want to access capital. So a simple thing like that, which is not going to cost DBJ anything in terms of extra funding, but releasing capital into the productive sector can trigger growth. The issue of, on the agricultural side, providing greater support to farmers, particularly in research, development, and the use of technology. That to me is very important. Why? Because rural development is an integral part of our economic growth strategy, particularly for persons on small scale farms, but also food sufficiency and being self-sufficient is important as a nation in a world which is no longer driven by a rules-based system. So if you ask me, some of the things I believe making government more efficient and effective can be immediate. Medium term would be what you do around energy and education, but very important. And having a very focused approach in some of the critical industries, in building out support in the logistics-centered economy. And what I mean by our role, government is not going to be trying to own assets, but there are areas government has to invest in to facilitate the private sector in seeing the opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities. And I think there's a lot more that can be done. I didn't touch housing as an example, but that's an area that I think there are tremendous opportunities in. Government is the largest owner of lands, right? What government has to do with the NHG funds, use those funds to provide the infrastructure like water, sewage, roads in particular areas, aggressively go to developers and say, listen, I expect you to build units in the $10 to $15 million range and deliver those units to me. I think there's a lot more we can be doing there. That is also probably one of the greatest drivers of economic growth. So it's not one quick fix, which will move us from 1% to 3 or 4%, but there are a number of things that I believe we need to focus on, which we have to do simultaneously, and we're committed to doing that, Cecil.
Sir Robinson, I want to keep you on the spot here because there's a train of questions that's coming. So let's just jump into it. Now, in your presentation, you had mentioned the incentivization of farmers. And the question is that what sort of incentives do you have in mind, since we're thinking of things that can move the lever in the short to medium term?
So there are a couple of things that play the farming. Well, we have unique challenges with weather, which we don't have control over. We have predatory larceny, which is a big issue. But there are some things that we can provide greater support in. Many of our small farmers still use what I would call antiquated farming techniques and measures, right? And so the role RADA needs to play is to provide the support, and this is technical support now, which is about how to plant, what to plant, when to plant, what are the techniques to be employed to reduce the probability of disease, etc. There is a need for more of that to the farming sector. But there's also a need for easier access to funding. And it is difficult for farmers to get access to funding. Many of them have to use cars, houses as collateral because it's hard to, banks are reluctant to take in your field with produce as collateral. So we have to find ways to make it easier for them. And also, I think, government has to increase the level of irrigation, which is currently in the country. As I said, even with what we're doing in St. Elizabeth, we're only at about 15% of arable lands that have access to irrigation. Now, what that means, when you can make lands irrigatable, if that's a term, farmers can produce all year round, and it's no longer seasonal, and it's no longer dependent on whether they get good rainfall, because we have the extremes. You have droughts and then you have flooding. But once you have access to irrigation, you can run for the entire year. What does that do? That improves your productivity. That gives you an opportunity to supply produce for the entire year. It improves your cost of living. So, those are some of the specific things in farming. Now, I looked in the chat and the question was about, can we compete with, other countries? We won't be able to compete in everything because, you have farms which are thousands of acres in other countries. But what I can say is that we have already made industry here, which is our tourism industry. We don't have to go and send things abroad. If we can reduce our food import bill, and we would set a target of anywhere between 5 to 10% annually, and we're spending 2.5 billion US dollars a year importing food into the country. A lot of it goes into the tourism sector. If we can reduce that by enabling local farmers to supply more of those things, you would immediately see an increase in our economic growth. And it also improves our own self-sufficiency. But it's not a simple equation. Our hotel industry needs consistency in terms of quality, quantities, etc. And that's where you have to provide the support to the local farming sector so that they can deliver those things. And we also need to be more transparent about how we use and issue import permits. We see where permits are used, stuff is brought in, which can be produced by local farmers. They are held in cold storage, then put out on the market. Farm price drops. Farmers end up having glut and having to pretty much sell things below market price. So again, how you issue those permits, when you issue them, there needs to be greater transparency there, and so that it has less of a negative impact on the local farming community.
All right. Thank you, sir. So you got to that question from the chat, so I won't put it back there, but I want to rope Dr. Lowe in here. Dr. Lowe, you had mentioned in your presentation well, actually, let me start it out with a very simple question that had come. You had mentioned reverse factoring. Someone was asking, what's that?
Right. So it's a form of specialized financing geared towards people who have, for example, a farmer who sells to a hotel and they are given 30-day credit. They need to reinvest their capital quickly to keep the cycle going for production and farming and paying bills. Now, many of them can't wait 30 days. So if there's a way in which an intervention can be made through this term and this concept, which is not unusual internationally, but it's not widespread in Jamaica, where a bank or an intermediary can go in and then provide cash flow against those approved invoices that are to be paid. So once you have an approved supplier or purchaser and the bank is comfortable, particularly if it's already their customer, an arrangement can be made to provide cash against those receivables. So another way of looking at it is receivable financing.
All right, thank you for that clarity. I do have a follow-up question from your presentation. Sure. Just inviting all guests, as you have been putting the questions in the chat, just continue to do that so we can keep moving at a good clip. Now, you had mentioned in your presentation that the DBJ has an eye towards supporting disruptive businesses, and please correct my statement if I'm misstating. So supporting disruptive businesses that may not yet have a proven product or model, but it looks good, right? Mm-hmm. Now, from our last conversation, one of the things that we saw was that it seems like, and Sir Robinson mentioned it, it's difficult for certain people to get financing. And it seems like there's a lot of risk aversion. So I'm wondering, what sort of support is DBJ considering here for these disruptive, but perhaps not fully proven businesses or industries?
That's a good question. Okay, let's broaden the scope of where the challenge lies. We have to be in a position to make interventions possible where the extent of the risk is not well understood in the context of normal commercial lending. So take, for example, someone has a technology platform that they want to roll out, but they don't have a proof of concept yet, but it's something that may mirror or can be benchmarked against another such platform internationally. That particular entrepreneur can approach one of our supported partners through what we refer to as an incubator. And this business incubator basically takes on board the concept, guides them as to how to build it out, supported by grants that we would be able to provide through our international partners who have specific needs that have to be met when it comes to what we call growth initiatives for MSMEs. So if we're only doing proof of concept, we may be limiting ourselves to creating the next, as it's referred to in the business world, the next unicorn, the next disruptor, who could simply just need a foot in the door, because once you get to the point of proof of concept, then it becomes a little bit easier. So our interventions as a development bank is really to look at how risk can be mitigated, or we can offset some of the risk premium. Because as you understand, many banks will not even look at a business unless it's been 2 years in operation, demonstrating cash flows. And when I say demonstrating cash flows, real cash flows, not just to say you're making profit and then you have receivables. They need to see money coming in to be able to have confidence that the risk is there. The second element is also understanding that this term referred to as a risk premium is when you have an elevated amount placed on an interest rate to offset your appetite for the particular risk. So again, what we want to do as a development bank is to find a way to de-risk or offset some of the risks by creating support through these incubators. And these incubators are run by third parties. So we basically get a qualified incubator who demonstrates the capacity to do business coaching in the particular area or industry. They're supported by specialists that may or may not be within the context of the development bank, but they're basically able to facilitate that opportunity for growth through that entrepreneur that has not yet proven the concept.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lowe.
And may I just add one more question, please?
Sure.
One more point, just for clarification. And what's important in early stage financing is that debt is not usually the best option. And what you find in other capital markets around the world is that equity is primarily where venture capitalists come in. So they find a way to bring capital in, monetize the business or provide cash flow for the business to demonstrate the proof of concept. And their equity stake is then a long-term reward where patient capital is there to support it. But banks are not in that business. And the development bank is certainly not specifically in that business, but we have to be a facilitator of making sure that the imperfections in our capital markets are offset by our interventions through these platforms, just for further clarification.
Got it. And I'm happy you roped in the private equity from your presentation there. So as opposed to starting with debt on your balance sheet, you have someone who has bought equity in your business, right, and it's a more longer term return. You know, it's fascinating. One thing that keeps coming out in your presentation is governance. And I want to corporate governance, responsible corporate governance. And I want to rope in Ms. Hamilton here from the MSME Alliance in speaking to corporate governance. Have you, from those who you work with in the MSME Alliance, like, are you seeing that they also recognize the need that, okay, we need more in that line?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having the session. Very important. In terms of corporate governance, a lot of our members are not, and I am going to be very honest, a lot of our members are not familiar with the term corporate governance. Most of our members in the medium band of our representation would be familiar with corporate governance, because most of them either looking to go public or they would have been, you know, exposed to debt financing or possibly private equity financing before. So I think to break it down for our members, what we normally communicate to them is that, okay, in order for you to access financing, there are certain key things that you need to have in place. You need to be compliant with your taxes. You need to have your regular audited financials, or at least have, you know, financial records in place. And you also need to demonstrate creditworthiness in terms of past history of borrowing. And as well, in terms of your future growth plans for your company, you need to be clear about that. So that is how we communicate corporate governance to our members. Apart from that, of course, you need to have at least an advisory board or a board of directors to help guide you. The word corporate governance, I think when it comes to MSMEs, that's how we break it down. And yes, they are well informed, But we also acknowledge that a lot of them, they are lacking where that is concerned. And that is something that we have been assessing. And I must say that the new managing director, Dr. Lu, has been listening in terms of what we can do to address that in a partnership. So that is something that we intend on addressing.
Right. Thank you for that. And, one of our previous questions, which Mr. Robinson spoke to, was about, competing with the world. And he did say we can't compete with everything. But this is one of those moments where we do have to level that up so that we can speak to and interact with the larger world. I want to pull you in here now, Sir Thwaites. We've been talking about agriculture. And one thing I realize is that when these forums happen, people consider if they're not already in a field, how they can get in because they see the opportunities. So let's talk export. How do we look in terms of exporting agricultural produce? The question that Mr. Robinson spoke to, it quoted, and I'm telling you the number that was in the question, that we consume over 98% of what we grow locally. But at the export level, is there a place for Jamaica to export a great deal more in terms of agricultural produce?
Yes, I think there is. And I agree with Julian in that it doesn't mean we're going to export everything to everywhere. It's certainly taken advantage of what Jamaica does well, what we have a reputation for. We're known as a high quality producer of ginger, turmeric, castor oil. So there are a number of things that Jamaica has a reputation for doing really well. So it doesn't mean that we have to get in and compete in corn or bananas, and that would be unrealistic. But do we have a role to play in exporting those niches? Absolutely. And I think, again, the tourism industry is a great advantage in exporting locally, is kind of what I call it, because you're providing the products and services to a larger than just the population we have in Jamaica. There's absolutely a role, and the tourism acts as that, as a local export, almost as that bridge.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Robinson, I want to come back to you. This one's a bit of a fuzzy one. I'm gonna let you have it as I see it. So this question points to the influencing the mindset of Jamaican nationals. So the question is, how might we influence the apparent individual mindset in Jamaica, so every man for themselves, every woman for themselves, to become more in line with social responsibility, national pride, putting in the effort to develop the things so that the tide lifts all boats, is how I would summarize the question.
I think we have to go back to, I advocated for introducing character education. Some people call it values and attitudes. In Sunday school, we're told to be good neighbors and good persons. But we have to, that has to become part and parcel of school life. It has to be said, but it has to be demonstrated as well. And whatever term you want to use, and I'm not hung up on the term, whether it's values and attitudes, whether it's character-based education, I absolutely believe it is important and is central to everything we do. We want to grow an economy so that everybody can participate, but without a doubt, we need a more gentle society. We need a society where we're less prone to solving differences through violence. So there are a number of things which, as Christian leaders, you preach every day, but they need to be part and parcel of what our students learn, absorb, and is part of the curriculum. So for me, that's something that we would look at introducing, not necessarily government-led because I understand the challenges if it is led by government. It has to be, it could be a church leaders and other persons who could lead that initiative. But to answer your question, I think it has to be done. If we want to create the kind of society we want, beyond just ensuring that our economy grows, but the society where all of us will feel comfortable living in, then we must do it.
So the type of people, the type of business all comes together to raise the economy.
There's another question I see from Kirk Lyle, and let me just answer it. He said, how can we fast track installation of more solar farms? So the government to do what I'd call large scale renewable projects, you have to respond to an offer from the government. So the government put out a request for a proposal in last year in 2024. They selected a number of providers. It will probably take about maybe 2 years, 18, 24 months before those providers actually build out their capacity. From our perspective, I said I was very disappointed that it took 8 years to put that out. We would be looking to do this every 3-4 years as a government to ensure that we can meet our goal of having 50% of our energy generated from renewables, which has an impact on costs, but also it has an impact on our carbon footprint. And we want to reduce our dependence on heavy fuel oil plus LNG. So, to answer this question, we would be committed to ensuring that there's more frequent requests for proposals for these large-scale renewable projects.
Okay. All right. Here's a question for the whole panel. I figure we'll take it from different angles, but what is your perspective on the potential impact of the geopolitical challenges relating to tariffs on Jamaica's agriculture and manufacturing sector? And the second part to that question being, how then do we navigate these challenges and position ourselves to protect the MSMEs from supply chain fallouts and exploiting benefits? Sir Robinson, you're on the floor already, so you can.
All right, so let me start by saying, I think, we are in a very dynamic environment, which is hugely unpredictable. And things tend to change on a pretty regular basis. But I would say, you're going to have an impact in terms of pricing. I don't know where the US will end up with China in particular with those tariffs. But, even for our manufacturing and our productive sector, many of our inputs are imported. And some of them are from North America, some from other parts in the world. So I think there is the potential for an immediate increase in prices in some of those things, right? Now, I think there is an opportunity too. I mean, we are at the low end of the tariff spectrum in terms of our 10%, which was levied across the board for countries which had deficits with the US, and the majority have deficits. I think we have to become more efficient in what we do, regardless of how the dust settles on this. And so improving productivity is important for our manufacturers and our producers here in Jamaica. There may be opportunities in terms of being a nearshore center to the US, countries in Asia who may want to use us for transshipment, for assembly, etc. But those things take time, and those things are not going to, you can't shift productive capacity overnight. So in the short term, I think it's braced for some short-term increase in prices, some disruption in supply chains, because the issues are not just tariffs, there are other measures related to ships coming out of China, which will probably have an impact as well. But, regardless of how the dust settles, some things we need to do better, which is to drive efficiencies, drive productivity, be more self-sufficient in terms of what we can produce, and identify export markets necessarily outside of the traditional markets. And I think there is ample scope for many of those things.
Identifying markets outside the traditional. Dr. Lowe, you want to come in on the same question?
Yes, I'd like to support Mr. Robinson on the opportunity side of the equation because while many of them may not be immediate or be evident to us in the short term, the nearshore opportunity from a assembly manufacturing opportunity is possible. But from where we sit at the development bank, we're monitoring more the impact on the ripple effect that has been created through these geopolitical moves, and that is interest rates. You'll be aware that in recent times we've noted that a number of countries have been affecting the treasury bond yield by selling off a number of their holdings, partly in response to the tariffs, but for other reasons that they want to protect their local markets and to have liquidity. But nevertheless, it has implications for us later on this year. There was an expectation that interest rates in the States would start to fall as a result of what was anticipated, but quite the opposite has happened, where interest rates are actually not falling because bond yields are going up. And consequently, any new issuance of debt will be affected by these reference points. So here in Jamaica, we need to be very aware that we need to anticipate what it could mean for interest rates over the next 2-3 quarters, because whatever happens, the reversal will be at best slow in terms of high interest rates or the rates at their current levels. And we just have to be very mindful that whatever interventions we put in, we need to be able to support our local businesses as it relates to not just cost of capital, but liquidity, because there could also be a play internationally in terms of a liquidity tightening through this process. So that's a perspective that I bring to what's going on.
Thank you. Sir Thwaites, let's bring you in, and then Lady Hamilton, you can follow, please.
Sure. I think the potential impacts are clear. Potentially inflation as a result. Also have the potential to change the landscape of the movement of goods, which could impact the cost of supply chain and availability of vessels and positioning of vessels and those types of things. All that being said, I believe that we should never waste a good crisis and look for ways to use the advantages that Jamaica has, our location, our ocean service, our cultural reach in the world that bats above our size. There are some inherent advantages that we have regionally. I think there's a good chance that one, we're not disadvantaged against any other countries. I think that's important to stress. I think Julian mentioned that as well. We're not disadvantaged against other countries. As a matter of fact, the tariffs in Guyana and Trinidad are higher than what Jamaica is looking at. So I think we need to, it's a dynamic time. Things are changing. We're not exactly sure how this is going to shake out with China and the US and Canada. I think we need to, I think what we're doing is the right thing, is that we're waiting until the landscape becomes clear. We're not jumping up and down. The US has the right to realign the trade policies with their partners. And we need to look for how to play a role in that supply chain once it shakes out. There's opportunities for Jamaica to have a participation in the supply chain, not only to our region, but to the US as a nearshore or reshore of goods and services. So I approach it from, we should be clear-eyed about the potential impacts, but also mind the opportunities and be agile and continue to invest in the places that give us those advantages.
Lady Hamilton, we have you.
Yes, so I must agree with all the panelists in terms of the impact and the both positive and negatively, because while we understand that, yes, we should take advantage of the crisis, what Mr. Robinson mentioned in terms of some disruption in supply chain, that is, is being felt in some areas already. For example, there are also MSMEs who were having conversation as to whether to take lower margins and not to pass on the increased tariff to their distributors. So while the impact may not be widespread at this point, there is impact. However, having said that, I agree with Sydney that we should not waste the opportunity. And also with Mr. Robinson that what we can do now, we should do. So releasing capital in the economy by making funding available to MSMEs as well as larger entities that Mr. Sydney may represent as well, so that economic activity can stimulate, start to spend the capital budget. Mr. Robinson mentioned, I think it was 62 billion. That could go a far way in terms of stimulating economic activity, so that we are not caught in a situation where, as Dr. Lowe would have mentioned, there is going to be possibly increase in interest rate. The banks are now going to be in a position where they're unable to lower interest rates, and then it is more difficult for persons to access capital at that point. So I think as it stands now, we need to move swiftly and do what is necessary to grow the economy.
Thank you. Thank you. We're in the tail end of our question and answer segment and the entire program. So I want to just treat with these two questions. There was a question about, Dr. Lowe, there's a question about how the DBJ sees itself in having, does it see itself in having a role in direct equity investment? I believe you spoke to that, being that the DBJ isn't in that business. But let me go through the question still. Does the DBJ see itself having a role in direct equity investments from medium to larger growth companies, separate from investments in funds? And then I'll pose the final question.
Okay, thanks for that. So broadly speaking, no. But could there be a path for further consideration where, for example, there is an identified scalable business that could potentially have what we'd refer to as a convertible note, where direct lending is possible. It has a convertible feature, and we know that that particular business could actually be listed on the stock exchange. As much as that wouldn't be the norm, an extraordinary situation like that could present itself, and if it's scalable and impactful, could probably be considered for further discussion at a board level and an opportunity to support such a intervention. So I don't think that we are in that business, nor should we be. But what we have done is to provide funding for those that are in that business to make it available, because the private sector is still the best funnel through which capital should flow and support the opportunity for growth and development. So our job is to create, address the market failures and imperfections, try and de-risk, try to create the liquidity with the players who can make a difference and assess credit and assess the opportunity for growth.
Got it. Our final question, and Mr. Robinson, we're going to close with you. The question is context. As we look to foster growth in Jamaica, it's clear that an essential component of this process is ensuring greater tax compliance across all sectors. For this to happen, every citizen needs to pay their fair share to support the national development. So the questioner is asking, what's your perspective on the introduction of a graduated tax return system?
I saw the question in the chat, but
Okay.
I don't know if Gavin could explain what he means, because he then says the system would allow small business owners to more easily file and make returns based on their income levels. Now, I want to understand a little bit more about what he means, because currently you can do that. In fact, everything can be done electronically now. In fact, the TAJ is encouraging and pushing people to pay everything online. You can file, you pay via credit card, etc. Even though there's still a physical opportunity to go in. But I'm not clear what he means by that graduated tax return system. So if he's on, Gavin,
Yeah,
if you could
yes,
just
of
explain
course.
it, please. Yeah.
Okay, I could have. I'm coming from the financial sector, and even to open a savings account, the smaller saver, what you ask a company to submit in order to open the account for compliance purposes, you wouldn't ask it from a small saver. In the same way, I'm not able to do my returns. I have to pay someone to do it, to fill out the 7 pages for me. So I was thinking what we need to do, even have a 1 page that will allow the electrician who don't want to incur the expense in paying an accountant and so to do their returns, just for them to be able to file easily.
Okay, so it's you want a more simplified return. That's in a sense what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's something we'd have to look at. I mean, you're right. I think for many small businesses, they don't necessarily have the expertise, so they hire accountants, and that can be an additional burden. That's certainly something that we could examine to see how it can be made simpler. You are absolutely correct. There's a huge burden now on the PAYE in our society for income tax, and we have to foster a greater culture of small businesses and self-employed persons actually filing and returning. So that's something that we'd certainly look at.
Yeah. And nothing against Antoinette, by the way, since she's an accountant and she does return for us.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the support and the questions tonight. We thank our panelists, our presenters, Mr. Julian Robinson, Opposition Spokesman on Finance, Dr. David Lowe, the Managing Director of the Development Bank of Jamaica, who are also panelists alongside Mr. Sidney Thwaites, the President of the JMEA, and Ms. Antoinette Hamilton, President of the MSME Alliance. Thank you all for being here. We're in the last 2 items of this evening's forum: the closing remarks and the vote of thanks by Mr. Alfred Thomas, the President of the ASI East Jamaica chapter. And that will be followed by the closing prayer by Pastor Carl Archer, President of the North Jamaica Conference. It's been my pleasure to moderate and to lead us through this forum. I'm Theodore Henry. I turn over now to Mr. Alfred Thomas.
All of our companies, all of the businessmen who are on, the Adventist businessmen, that's what we do to thrive and ensure we have a very successful company here in Jamaica. Julian, thanks very much for being here, and also to the fact that you bring out the teacher in you, because you focus on five E's: education, workforce, must be trained. You said that there are 700,000 Jamaicans outside the normal workforce. You want to bring those into the normal workforce by getting them trained, giving them the skill set to help with change in the 1% growth over the past 15, 20 years or more. So that's an excellent push. Energy and electricity. Can you imagine 40 cents, per kilowatt hour? That is high. So you're saying that you have to push people to go into more renewable energy and more solar, improve net billing, and reduce one big one that is impacting a lot of us in Jamaica. We all have to pay for the whole matter of stealing of the electricity. If you can solve that, you will be a genius, Sir Julian. That is something that you see. Then you also spoke about the whole matter of efficiency. And that is a big thing that is missing. Efficiency, meaning the capital cost of $62 million that is sitting there, not spent. If that money was spent in building the roads that they are building, we could help a lot to improve some of the unemployment, where there is unemployment. You also look at the emerging economies that we can focus more on, which are the musicians. You know, we can remember people like Bob Marley. If they had not gotten the opportunity, the reggae music would not have been so much a big part of the Jamaican economy, and also worldwide we are recognized. You're also looking at the potters. There are small industries that can be taken out, focused on, and so that's an excellent one under the emerging economies. And then you also spoke to the whole matter of integrity. You're saying that more of that is needed in governance, in government, and so that persons who are out in their economy, in their companies, and across the country can see that, wow, we can see where we can reduce possible Jamaica's ranking in terms of integrity level and the international scale. So those were some excellent points that you brought, and we will take these points, share them with our members, and make sure that the members use these things in their business across Jamaica. Dr. Lowe, excellent presentation. The Michael 2 Stock Exchange, you are saying that that's something that you're looking at to give more persons access to capital. Reverse factoring, you answer the question well, and you're saying that's something that can be looked on. Supporting the sectors and all those clusters. The green climate financing you're looking at from your business. Supply chain financing. The silver economy, the green economy, you are saying that from your vantage point, you want to focus more on that at the JDB, and we will encourage our members to tell them that these facilities are available. And then the new initiatives that you're now pushing, and you're saying they're available for us to capitalize on. Upfront loan liquidity. That's a very big one, an important one for us to all gravitate to. Energy audit grant. If we can get more of our people in Jamaica to just go out there and adopt the principle of installing solar energy, and you are there to help, that's a big one that we are asking our members now to capitalize on. The introduction of financial literacy. Many companies, we are encouraging our members to start a business plan, to have an accountant, to make sure that they do their filings of their taxes, and to make sure that their accounts are kept. So we like what you're saying there, Doctor. The introduction of specialized agri-sector. Go back to what Julian said. We are importing $62 million to 62. No, we are importing $2.5 billion worth of agricultural products. And Julian is saying, wow, if we can move the 15% agro lands to 30%, it means therefore that we will have more products to supply to the big tourist industry that we have, and then we could reduce the 2.5 billion imports on our cultural products, and then use some of those things that we produce for the local economy, or then also to export some of those products. The standardized stakeholders support. You want to work more with the JMEA, and we're happy the president of the JMEA is on. He was on at the first session, meaning that his members appreciate you, Mr. Twist, because of the fact that you're here, you're listening, and you will take back these points. Say to your members, go to the JME, go to the Development Bank. They have some good products that you can draw on. The MSME, we hear, Antoinette, we are happy you're back again. We see that you're relying now on the Development Bank to get some support from them. That is excellent. And also, we hear the question about the impact of the tariff up north. We are saying to our members or business people, do more south shopping for goods. Don't depend only on these large countries. We are saying to you, look at other sources for your businesses. I also heard somebody mention the fact that we have a good situation if we can introduce more of the SEZs. It means, therefore, that given the location of the Panama Canal, ships coming to Jamaica, drop off and pick up cargo onwards south or onwards east or west, it means, therefore, that we can possibly now look into the possibility of doing local manufacturing here in Jamaica, using those multinational companies that are having challenges in terms of far shore and want to make it near shore. We are saying to you that the SEZ is something that we should look at. And finally, we talk about the ROW, the rest of the world. There is a big situation here in Jamaica whereby if we can start to produce more with our culture, train our people more, convert those 700,000 persons into small industries. It seems as if this session this evening, put on by the ASI Jamaica, would have been a worthwhile event. And we hope that all the persons who are on the different stations, on this platform this evening, would have picked up something from Julian Robinson. Thank you, sir. From Dr. Lowe, from the JMEA president, and from the MSME president who is here. We thank you for the support. May God bless you all. Theo?
Right, it's actually back to Pastor Archer.
Archer, great.
You here?
I'm here. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. Let's just close in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to you for your kindness, your amazing grace to us, your love. Thank you for the productive session we have had, for the presenters, for the questions, for the responses, the clarifications, the plans, the projections. We ask you now to take each presenter, each participant in charge, bless their families, their businesses, their responsibilities, their duties, their services. And may all of us present on this platform this evening be more effectively prepared, trained, enlightened to advance the cause of productivity, efficiency in Jamaica, and certainly to advance your cause. Grant all of us your blessing and your protection and guidance as we attend to other businesses right after this. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.